Thank you. I believe I'm screen sharing now, Mum. Is that okay? Oops. Right, okay. Right, thanks for waiting there. Sorry about that. As I said before, I'm just going to whip through some of the things that are happening in the UK, innovation-wise, using the new UI primarily, but of course that goes hand in hand with using Angular and JavaScript and jQuery if you care to set the pace. That'll be for 20 minutes. I'll just whip through. Thanks to people here and not here who've passed on the innovations that they've done in their new UI. I'll do my level best to demonstrate some of them for about 20 minutes, and then I'll hand over to Mehmet, who will get down to the techie detail. It's a bit this presentation is a bit Heath Robinson. I've kind of thrown it together sort of on the train a little bit as well. So if you want to ask any questions at any point, if you want to get drilled down into technical detail, I'm just going to give an overview of some of the things that have been done and a brief, a few words about how it was achieved technically. But if you want to get down to code, just give me a shout and I'll get the code out. Right, I'll press on. So that's in a nutshell what I'm covering. I know there's lots of innovation going on out there with the new UI. There's lots of people doing things, but I've spoken to and been contacted by these people, of myself, of course, with some information about the kind of things they've been doing. And I'll show you a bit of the stuff that I've been doing at the University of Leicester as well. I've had the privilege to have had a few weeks to just hack away at the new UI. I normally got 10 other things to do, like I'm sure all of you do. But I just sort of said, I'll tell with that. I'm going to just get on with this because my brain's going to explode if I don't focus on the technical details of that. So I'm sure you know how that feels like. And then Mehmet, and then hopefully all be well with ExLibris as well. So Tim's not too well at the moment, wasn't able to come along, but you may have met Tim at Epug last year. They did a great presentation. Sussex did a great presentation. They've really grabbed the new UI and broken it down. Extensive UX redesign of the system, and it's actually very elegant. I actually love what Sussex have done. They've stripped it down to the sort of absolute only. The students, they're very much keen on saying we want less, not more. We find those facets confusing. Dare I say it, sometimes it can be an overly library-centric view of the universe, whereas students just want stuff to come at them. And they did a great job of breaking that down. But Tim's also been doing a lot of work on adding bells and whistles to the new UI once they've got it working. Could I just ask a straw poll? Has anybody in the room here already implemented the new UI at their institutions? Okay. Oh, really? Was that those ExLibris? Was it? They just. Right. Was it perceived to be a better interface, and that was all? Agreed. Fair enough. Right. Decision made up top. Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, I don't normally like to agree with management, but I actually quite like it. I think it's quite a nice interface. But, yes, very true. Yeah. I mean, I came from Cersei Dynix, which was god awful, and then Primo version 1 was like heaven compared to that. But then I saw the new UI. I thought that's even better still. And it even made Primo 1 look a bit sort of old, as you say. But okay, thanks. Right, here we go. This should be nice and easy. Somewhere here. There we go. This is the Sussex interface. And I believe I'm right in saying that one of the Sussex have done two things. Oh, that's not it. Yeah, it isn't actually. Oh, that's it. Yeah. So the first thing they've done is they've integrated Talis Aspire. Leicester uses Talis Aspire as well. Obviously, Leganto's coming on the scene, and that's quite a credible alternative to Talis Aspire. This URL here apparently will be action. I think what Tim's done is he's basically injected it using Angular into the user interface. Just bear with me a sec while I flip around between these things. Yep, something like it. You may have to take my word on that one. Then basically when a resource comes up, below, when you go to the Get It page, let's see if I can give it a go. Sorry, it's going to be a bit fractured, I'm afraid. Oh, sorry, you can see it down there. Not very well, admittedly. Just here. So that's the Get It. So I clicked on a specific resource pack, and then just at the bottom it says this is the list of reading lists for this item is here. Which one is touch? Sorry, say again. Oh, right, okay. I don't know, I'm afraid. Just bear with me a second. That's all right, no problem. Let's have a look. I don't know what that one is. I think what I actually did was I typed in Stroud, which is a mathematical engineering book I used as an undergraduate, and that brought up some results. And if you keep going down and just click on a few of them, eventually you'll get to that. It's the when you go to the Get It tab, that's the next window that pops up, and then down at the bottom on there. Oh yeah, and this is something that I know I've been working on at Leicester as well. So I've taken a slightly different approach from Tim, but this is a way of putting up maps. So I'll give this link a go. See if this one works. It's not working out. Okay. That's all right. I know this is quite painful. I was fully expecting this to be a painful session, and I wasn't kidding. Again, you have to take my word for it, I think. But I'll move on from Tim's work. This is Ron at Ithaca College, and he's dealt with it. He's graphed the same nettle, and to your right there, you can see again if you go to the website and you choose an item, and it's a physical item in the actual library itself. You click on the Get It tab, and then you can see there on the right-hand side, not terribly clearly, there's a map of the stacks showing where the actual item is. And Ron's taking it a step further from what we're doing at Leicester. We just note a particular area of the library, but he's actually gone right down to sort of individual stack level, which is really, really nice. Again, I have not got a great deal of detail about how he's achieved that, but he's quite happy to share his code on GitHub, which is, again, I'll make these links available at the end of the session. I've kind of squeezed all this together, and hopefully Melo can make the video of this whole session, and you can get the code he's used there. I believe it's just used a bit of PHP, I think. It's not too bad, and some Angular to inject the appropriate image into the Get It tab. And he's happy for you to, you know, branch it off on GitHub and do different things with it if possible. Ron's also released, I don't know where you are with your icons. We've noticed our students, the icons seem fairly contentious, the ones that come up on the left-hand side of the results when you get them. And our students have said they don't like the fact they move. I'm not quite sure why that is. And they're not overly demonstrative of what the material is as well. So Tim, who I mentioned previously, has produced his own set of icons with the UX company that they brought in to do the Sussex revamp. And they've made those freely available as well. Again, I'll stick that link on the summary at the end of the session. And Ron's created these ones as well. So you've got a really rich choice. You can go with the ExLibris standard, or you can try the ones that Sussex have used, or Ron's as well. And again, I'll make this available, and you can follow the GitHub link, and you can download the whole set. Essentially, what you do is once you download Ron's or Tim's set, you get a load of files basically, and you drop them into your version of the new UI, and they all follow the same naming convention. And the new UI is smart enough to know that's what you want it to do, and it just adopts the new icons. But Leicester, we haven't released our version of the new UI yet, but we've gone with Sussex icons because we preferred them. So you've got a choice there now. Duncan gave me some really great advice when I had some problems with the new UI. One of the things that I don't understand about the new UI yet, and maybe Mehmet will fill in some gaps for me, he's going to talk about Angular in a bit more detail in a few minutes. I wasn't sure how to tie the things I wanted to do with JavaScript to the Angular events framework. In fact, I was getting nowhere with it, and Duncan very smartly suggested me I just set up a timer. So I set up an interval timer in JavaScript. I've done most of my innovations in JavaScript. And I set up a timer, and the timer just fires off every half a second, doing all the code that I need it to do on a regular basis. So if I want to inject something into the page at a certain point, the timer just goes around and around and around and just checks the same code every time. I just got to make sure I don't call the code with a null element or something like that. So it's a bit of a Heath Robinson way of getting around it, but until I understand Angular a little bit better, having that tick, tick, tick all the time like that allows me to do all kinds of JavaScript-related events, even though the new UI is powered by Angular. So a lot of things are happening without page refreshes. Because I was a bit thick, and when I did my JavaScript first, I couldn't understand why it wasn't updating every time, because it was all handled by Angular, all the interaction was. So I'm sure it's just a matter of I'm going to need to have a light bulb moment, and I'll understand how to use the Angular framework. But for the moment, this is a really good way to allow me to get things working. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but when you log on as a visitor through the new UI interface, you get a very basic page with a logo on if you're lucky, sort of thing. And we've had some feedback from users that it's not very clear what it's for, and the labels are fairly generic, and they don't explain what you're supposed to do. There's a bit of confusion. So I had a conversation with ExLibris recently, and they've given me access to the server where this page exists. As you can see, Duncan's got the same thing as well, and he's done a far nicer version of the page. So just an FYI, really, if you're not happy with the login page that comes up when visitors arrive at your version of the UI, if you ask ExLibris, they'll give you access to it, and you can style this and add HTML elements to it in JavaScript as well. So I wasn't aware you could do that. I tend to just go the default, but that is possible. But that let's say requires a conversation. And I think Duncan shared a lot of other things, a bit ahead of the game, Duncan, and I think he shared some other things on the list that might be worth trolling through, because he's given me some great advice. A bit about me. I've done quite a few things with the new UI interface. We love it straight out of the box. It's really, really good. There's been a very positive response from the senior management down to the workers in the library, and we're definitely going to go with it. It's just a case of when, but we want to do a few tweaks to it. We're very inspired by the Sussex breaking the Sussex experience of breaking it down. So we're doing a UX testing session with our students as well, and asking them what they want. We're very much with Sussex in the back of our minds, I suppose. And we want to add a few bits and bobs as well. I'm not even going to try and get to my browser, but I'll say in a second, we've had an opening times app. That's something that we did some analysis of our web stats, and we realized that after searching for books, the thing students wanted to know the most was when the place was open. And we had the usual well-meaning but kind of crap page with opening times, and you have to click here and then you have to interpret what on earth the page is going on about. What about bank holidays, blah, blah, blah. So I'll show you this in a bit. We broke it down, and now it's an XML document that I've created on a spare server, essentially. And I wrote some jQuery to an asynchronous jQuery call to this XML document. It just pulls out today's opening times and then puts them on screen. I'll show you in a second. Students as well, the Sussex experience more than the Leicester one, and students didn't like the fact that the facets in the new UI are on the right-hand side. So I've got a picture. There we go. So they didn't like these things on the right-hand side. I'm not sure why they don't like it. I think it's just a personal preference. Some people like them on the left and on the right. So we were thinking about where we were going to put ours, and our UX guy at work said, "Oh, it's a bit of a can't just choose where they go." So I thought that sounds like an opportunity for some Angular. So I wrote some script and figured out what CSS it's required to move this lump from the left to the right, and then sort of animated that with jQuery. I'll try and give you a demo of that later on. Oh, sorry, that's the thing in the middle. There's the app that tells you the opening times. What have you as well. I'm looking forward to crunching the stats on our Apache stats to find out how that's gone, because if that has turned out to be as useful as I think it might be, and hopefully we'll see a drop on the number of hits on the opening times, the normal opening times page. To the right hand side, I managed to persuade my colleagues that this is a golden opportunity to advertise news and events as well, because we just again crunched the stats. And it turns out that our search page is actually the most popular web page in the entire University of Leicester offering, apart from the home page, which everybody's browser boots up to when they start it up, so that doesn't really count. It's not a very interesting page anyway. So we are basically the custodians of the most popular page that we offer. So this thing that pops down there is going to have news and events on it, but there's a lot of contentious views about how that should be done, whether it should be in your face or whether it should be held back. So that's a conversation we're still having. The thing on the right hand side is just my sort of first pop at doing it. Again, it's powered by jQuery because I chickened out of using Angular. And as you can see, my philosophy is essentially that the interface is so good and it's responsive and all the rest of it. I've left the interface alone. I've made a few tweaks to the interface, but essentially I thought it's good, don't mess with it. And I put that bar across the top with all the extra governs in it that I've created with code. Another issue that we've got is with book reviews. There's a general feeling amongst my colleagues that when you do a search on any of the interfaces, we get too many book reviews, and sometimes if people are looking for a specific book, it tends to get lost in the noise surrounding book reviews and things like that. I don't know whether you're having similar kind of experiences. So I've been scratching my head about how to solve that problem, and I put in a vote. I think some other people did as well, about having that added to the new UI to make it turn off and onable. Again, I don't know if I'm talking to any Summon users, but that used to be possible in Summon. We used to have that before the new UI, and you could just tell it to ignore book reviews, and it tends to clear up the results a bit. So my boss said, can we do anything about that? I'll try and demonstrate that in a minute. So I wrote a bit of code to inject the appropriate additions to the URL to stop those reviews coming up. A bit of fancy footwork with JavaScript. And I've added a footer. I'm not quite sure what the point of a footer is on a page that has an infinitely extending list of results, but I think it was a nudge to the old school. We had one before, we want one now, but I don't think it's going to survive into the version that we put out on the web. I'll try and show that in a minute. Let's give it a go. I'm seeing it. You're not. Yeah. If I do that, no. I can't kill my own presentation. Okay, it won't let me. It won't let me out. I don't think. I promise you. No, it really isn't going to let me on my presentation. Okay, so I'll have to get to that at the end. So that's the work that I've done. I think I've seen that already. And as I said before, and as you're probably aware, the NewUI, unless anyone has an alternative experience, is very responsive. And apart from the hacking that I've done at the top of the page, it all pretty much works nice and smoothly. That's just an example of something again. My setup, somebody asked me a bit about this. One of the things that it's hard to do with NewUI, as you may or may not be aware when you're prototyping it, is that in order to effect a change to the NewUI, you've got to squash all your files into a zip file, and you have to upload it onto the ExLibris server, which isn't really a particularly useful way of doing fast prototype development. So you've got two options at this point. There's Gnome's, I don't know whether you've seen Gnome's postings on the list, but he's come up with an arrangement, again, that's on GitHub, and I'll put the links up, where you can set up your own sort of mini server, and you can sort of fake using the NewUI, and you can do fast prototyping. I tried setting it up and couldn't get it working. So that's one option, but I am assured that it does work if you want to do faster. And then you can just develop as you would normally do, try a thing, test it, try a thing, test it, because you really can't do that out the box. I got a bit lost with that, so I've got a couple of servers that I look after at work. And what I was able to do, thanks to ExLibris leaving the thing fairly open, is you can do your script. I do all my scripting on a separate server, and I use these calls, JavaScript calls, just to basically add the scripts to the NewUI interface on load. So essentially, I can do tweaks on my local server very, very easily, and they're instantaneously effective on the sandbox. So if you do have a server, I'd recommend that approach, as well as using remote JScript and CSS files on this local server I've got. I also started using jQuery as well. Again, I don't know if you knew about this, but there's the interface comes with jQuery Lite, which is just like the basic tools required to navigate the DOM and a few other things. But I'm more of a heavy jQuery user, so I've included jQuery originally on my own server at work, but then I moved it onto the ExLibris server, and I referred it up there, so I can drag in jQuery and use all the functionality that jQuery has. So I've got pure JavaScript, jQuery, and Angular going on in my setup, and yet they all seem to coexist fairly nicely. So I'm pleased to say. So that's a trick you can use, and I'd recommend that if you have got your own server. Just go for that. And I have the really pleasant experience that I can literally just tweak a file in my office, and whiz bang, it's affecting the sandbox or sandbox versions of the script. So again, I can stick the code up for that at the end of the session. I'm going to hand over to Mehmet in a bit. I think I've been talking a little bit too much, and he's going to talk about a bit more of the detail of Angular, if the technology works. I'll see if I can, before I hand over to Matt, I'll just close this down and see if I can get my browser up on the screen. Yeah, brilliant. This is the University of Sussex. I'll see if I can demonstrate that that session. Let's see. Try that one. So this is an item at Sussex that's available, physical item. Let's show it in a section. And there we go. If you can see that. Oh no, they're links to something else. Okay, I picked damned if you do, damned if you don't. I've picked one that doesn't have that isn't part of somebody's reading list, but that's where it would appear had it been one. This is Ron's website. If I click on one of the links here to an item in the general stacks, the get it page comes up, and normally this would be blank at this point, but he's injected the thing as I explained before. This is my test site. You can see the footer there. that just then disappears as it gets squished out of the way with the results. This is the app that I wrote, the powered by jQuery. This is pulling the data from an XML file remotely, and it just it tells the student when it's open today, when it's staffed, and then for the next 5 days, and you can configure that. Again, if you want the code, I'm quite happy to make that available. This is the news thing. So again, it's a contentious issue. I'm not quite sure how we're going to implement this, but for the moment, it's a movie that's just been injected into the NewUI interface, but we're not sure whether we're going to go for that yet. And this is the bit of coding I did to move the facets. You can move them from left to right like that. And when you decide where you want it, it writes a cookie to the local user's computer using JavaScript, so it remembers what the side they chose. And I think that will be a good time for me to hand over to. Wow, what happened there? Hi, Mehmet. Something strange happened to the screen, but no, something really strange happened to the screen. We've got a sort of recursive thing going on. I'm not quite sure what that is. Just let me try maximizing it. Maybe that will solve it.
Stop sharing your screen.
Shall I stop sharing it? Okay, hang on. Okay, I've done that. I've done that now. I can see you now, I think, on the screen. Can you see me? Do you want to take control of the screen, Alex? Or?
No, I'm just going to present to everybody.
Okay.
I have the same effect as you have. And let's start the presentation. So, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay. I am Mehmet Selik, and I work for the University of Leuven in Belgium. The university has been around since 1425. We have about 12 campuses in Flanders. I'm going to talk to you on how I look at the NewUI, how I try to understand what's going on and what the general idea is behind it. So Rob already showed you some links to how to customize or how to do best practices in customizing the NewUI. The NewUI cookbook, which is not mine, it's I can't remember her name, but she's in the States. And then the thoughts, ideas, tricks on the NewUI. That's a document that I'm trying to keep up to date, and it looks more on the JavaScript side. The NewUI cookbook is more a CSS cookbook, basically, for a NewUI. Of course, AngularJS. It's not that important with the NewUI, but if you know and understand what the ideas behind AngularJS, then it makes things a lot easier. So if you have read all of them, and if you've watched Noam's great presentation on Developers Day, and if you have participated or even or watched the hackathon, then you might ask yourself, oh, and you even found the source code, which is in your browser, and as you can see, it's TypeScript, so not JavaScript. But you might ask yourself, yeah, well, okay, what now? I've read the whole thing. I've watched all the movies, and now, what do we do now? If I can just summarize Angular in a very high-level way, Angular creates an application called Primo Explorer in this case. And what you can do is you can create extra or add-on applications, modules, and there are two important ones that ExLibris supports out of the box: View Custom and Central Custom. And what you basically say is, well, I want to put my modules into this box, and so this is the name of your module, of your element that you want to add, and this is other modules that you would like to access from your module, then you just put that in the application box. And if you want to get them back out, if you want to read them and see what's in it, you can just say, give me back this module without any array list of modules, and it will give you back your Angular module. There are a couple of modules which are implemented at the moment. These are just a couple of them. It used to be different before the February release, but since the February release, ExLibris moved from ng forward to ng metadata, which is a library that lets you write the TypeScript Angular 2 code basically, and it translates it into Angular 1, which was a very good thing. It made the code base 50% smaller. Probably also made it faster. On the other side, it was not so nice for people who are developing components or UI stuff, because it broke a couple of things. But I'm guessing that these are just simple growing pains. So if I can just move to my web browser and see if this one works. Yeah. So getting or loading a module is relatively easy, as I said. So you can just query Angular and then ask for a module. And let's say we want to get the infra module, and it returns an object. So if you have a closer look at this object, you will see a bunch of underscore components which are Angular specific and normally should not touch them. The invoke queue normally contains all the components, but they only have 4, so it's no use of looking at it at the moment. But what's interesting is you can also see which elements or modules are also added into the Primo Explorer infra application box. So what makes it nice is that you can just take this and remove it. You will be able to look at what ng material uses basically. And if you look at the requires array here, you see that it uses a lot of other modules. So let's go back to the presentation. So the nice thing about these modules is that they contain components, and components get rendered to your HTML screen. This also means that your templates are interpreted, and what you see on your screen is not always what you have in your template. And if you look inside of the components, it has a model controller view structure. The model and controller are one piece in Angular. The model is mostly your scope and contains a huge list of attributes and objects. And the view is your template that gets rendered to the screen. And between controller and the view, you will have two-way binding. So you can write back to your controller from your template. So the nice thing about the way ExLibris packaged the whole, or took the Angular problem and presented to the end user is that you only have to be aware of 2 files. So the custom module.js file, which should contain view custom or central custom. So this one actually defines your new module, your new application. And then a second file called PRM some module or some element, DOM element on screen, and after. Here you see the name of the DOM element again, and this will be compiled in your Primo development environment into one file, which you can upload to Primo, and which will be shown on screen then. So your controller, then your template, which is very simple in this case, and it uses some model element from your controller that you define. So John is set into the who attribute, and this will be rendered when your template is when the component is rendered to the screen. So this parent controller is a one-way binding into the controller element of, in this case, the parent element being Primo search bar. Yeah. So in your controller, if you say this dot parent controller, as it is written here, you will be able to access all attributes and objects which are stored in the search bar component. Now, let's do a quick look at these components. For this, I will reload the screen with debug information. Why do I need to do this? If we don't do this, then we won't be able to access the scope of a component, and which can be interesting to look at. So now we have reloaded the screen with debug information, and what we can do now is we can, for example, look at a component. So let's look at the logo up here. So we would say, I was also a huge jQuery fan, but I kind of learned to live without it. So we can access the element like this on the DOM, on the HTML page, but we can also angularify it by saying, well, this is an element that we are interested in, and let's put this in a variable. So now the variable contains the DOM element, which is wrapped with Angular sauce. And what we can do now is we can ask to get the scope of the element. It will return another object which contains a lot of specific stuff that Angular needs to work. But we can also access, since we have the scope, we can now also access the controller within the scope. As you can see, there are a couple of objects in the scope, like the show main menu, for example. You can switch it on or off. It should be this thing up here. Yeah. And if we take another object, so let's call this controller 2. And let's say we are interested in getting the search bar scope and the controller. You will see that the controller of the search bar contains completely different objects compared to the logo, which probably makes sense, but which also makes it very difficult for somebody who's just starting out with Angular to get a hang of it, and because there are two hurdles. One is Angular, which you shouldn't be afraid of. You only use one specific pattern. And the second one is the NewUI. It's it's a complex piece of work. It's a great piece of work, but it's very difficult to find your way in it. So you have to keep looking at what's here, what can I use. So there are a lot of services. So what do they do? Unfortunately, and I believe the documentation is coming, but up until now, there is no documentation on what these services do and how you can use them within your daily work. Probably 90% of the people don't need to go into this deep level of things, but the stuff that Rob showed can be easily done by using these services and components. So now we have this C2 component. What we could do is we could use a search service, enter something else as a search string, and have it run. But we can also directly go to the result list, because there is one. And as you can see, again, it contains other objects. But what we can do now is, since there is a search result, we can say, give me the search results. So these are the search results, different objects. But I'm interested in the first object, and I want to look in the PNX records, the control object, and give me its record ID. So this is the first record ID of the first record. Yeah. Knowing all this, we can continue playing with it. But back to the presentation. This is a personal opinion. I find that the model controller is unstructured. There's probably a very good reason for doing it that way, but it just doesn't fit in my brain. And this makes it very difficult for component writers to get, for example, the most simple stuff like session information, record information, facet information. If you are in the logo, for example, and you would want to print some session information in there, it would be difficult, but yet you have to know your way around it. So it's not easy. Again, this is my opinion. I think we need a domain model object or a domain object model. And what is this? This is something that just contains the information that you need, and that this model is static. The form, at least, should be static throughout your whole application, and should not be forced to find backdoors or go up to the object tree and down the object tree to get to your data. I tried looking at this in a different way. What I did was I tried to create an object which is a simple domain object on top of the NewUI. See if it's active. So, and you can access it by typing Primo. This is by default not installed. It's still a project which is in development, so it does not contain everything. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what you could do with it. And we can explore components. We can get, for example, all the keys of the components. So these are all the components that are active at the moment. And this is a non-static list. So depending on your URL, components will come alive and die. So this list will change continuously. So we could get, for example, the logo. Let's put in a variable. And what you will get back is a component. So this is just one. But if you would go for the icon, for example, the icon is used a lot, you will get 383 elements back in an array. So this component, we can look at it. So let's stick it in another variable. It's a component, so you can ask for its element, which goes to the DOM. You can ask for its name, which gives you the name of the object, nothing special. But you can also ask for a CSS path. So now you can take this and query for it. So we could say, please give me, I want to query the document with this path. And this would give you the element. And if you ask for the element as such, it will be the same thing. So it points to, as you can see here up, it will point to the same object which is on screen. So this makes it very easy to say, I want to restyle this. So I want to have the background color, for example, black. Don't know what this is going to do. It turns it into black. And if you do not know where the object is, you can also have it blink, and nothing happens. Long-lived demos, but it should blink. Maybe you can try with C2. You can also ask for its scope. So this is the scope. Same thing as we did before. And you can also ask for the controller. So same functionality as we had before. This is the component. But you can also, let me clear the screen. You can also have access to some session information, being the session ID, a view object, IP, and a user object. So you can, for example, see which user it is. It's a guest user. You can look at the IP address. And so on and so on. So you can look at the view. You can also check if a user is logged in, for example, or is on campus. So stuff that people, well, stuff that I would basically use to create new objects. So you also have access to the records, of course. So this will give you back the same object as we did with search results just a while ago. And you could, for example, get all the record IDs which are on your screen at the moment. And same goes for facets. So you can ask for the facets. And here you see it was unable to go through the scope, so it will try to go through the root scope, but this function is not available for all objects, unfortunately. So we can get the name of the facets, get the count, oops, count of the creator facet. You can also get its values, which is an array of 120 elements, which is correct because the count set 120. And of course, well, you can get a value which contains another count and a creator name. This is command line, but I primarily wrote this to quickly have a look at what was going on screen. So you can also fire up UI. I'll close this one. So it will load all components which are on screen at the moment, and filter on this component. Up here you will see how many components are available, the name of the component, the CSS path, some elements which are there, so it still needs to be worked on, as you can see. So the CSS path changes, and you can now blink works, so now you see it blink. And you can also push it to your console, and then it will create a variable loop. It will create a variable in your console, which makes it easy to work with. So Primo icon. Okay, let's go back to my presentation. So that is more or less what I have, my idea on what a model is, or what the main object model is. So something that is handy, always sits there, and that you can use to write your own new components. So I hope to make it available, really available. You can already have a look at it and play with it, but it's not, it's stable enough, but it's not, how shall I say, production quality. It still needs some documentation to explain why things are done the way they're done. And I also have to test if it's useful in components, if you would use it to write components. It's useful to check and to learn the new UI, but I'm not sure if it can be used in a larger scale to write components. So if anybody's interested, just contact me, and we can work on it together. The session object still needs some more things into it. It's a bit simple at the moment, but I first had to get the basics right before I can continue. And maybe it can be a replacement for jQuery Primo. I always said that I was not going to write a replacement for it, but yeah, plans seem to change. This is the URL on GitHub. It already contains some documentation, so the stuff that I just showed you here, but it still needs a lot more work on how to use it, how to install it. It will be, since it is using the same Primo Explorer structure of other components, so you could just take the JavaScript file and drop it into your view, and it should work. But yeah, it still needs some work at the moment. So thank you. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions? I'm happy to relay them. Yeah, we're busy thinking here.
Okay, no problem. Take your time. Yeah, anyway, if you have any questions, then you can always contact me.
Brilliant, thanks, mate. You mentioned that the absence at the moment of an instruction manual. I thought I might open that as a question for Noam and his colleagues. I'm guessing they're still there. Noam.
Yeah, we're here. What was the question? Hi, it's Noam and Mary, Shaul, and David from the Primo. Can you repeat the question?
Sure, yeah. I was just wondering, there's no instruction manual for this sort of the inside functioning of the UI. Would that be something that's will be coming along at some point, just to help those of us without Mehmet's skills to understand their structure?
We're not sure what is the correct boundary between our code, and though you can use information in our services, we're not sure of the way we can document it. Maybe we had ideas of extracting like information as Mehmet demoed to a global service, but we haven't really decided what is what's the correct way to really publish you the information you can use and keep it backwards compatible. Because we do want to maintain us the ability to change the information on those services. However, all of the information, of course, comes from new REST APIs that will be documented and exposed later at the beginning of 2018. And for now, we think, other than what Mehmet showed, this is the workflow we will recommend. If you need information, it will be documented on the REST API. It is, of course, available in the services as well, because it came from the REST API, but we're not sure how to expose it to developers otherwise.
Okay, thanks, Noam. Thanks very much. I sent a few questions that I compiled to you this morning, I think it was. Did you get them by any chance?
Yes.
I know some of them are a bit rubbish because I wrote some of them. So in light of what Mehmet's just showed me, I think I've probably got answers to some of them, but I wondered if there's any that you felt you could stick an answer to.
Okay, so should I just go over the questions and?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the first question is there a race condition or execution order for, I guess, different controllers? I'm not absolutely sure what those controllers actually do. But the way directives are designed are to be isolated, meaning we gave you hooks to write your own directives, which are little pieces of HTML and JavaScript that should be independent. There shouldn't be any connection or any race between different directives. So I will need some explanation as to why a race condition is relevant here. But generally, we let Angular decide what to load when it needs it. So as long as you write your directives isolated, you will benefit a more code which is safer and lasts longer, and you wouldn't have to worry about how Angular loads each and every directive. So.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
The first question. I didn't really understand the second one. Do published services and their utility functions exist? If so, how do I know of them? I think it does relate to what Mehmet just showed, so we already addressed that. Regarding the third question about using taking the institution from the parent controller, and then the skip to service, user session manager, and user institution. It's I don't think relating to it is a hack. It's okay. It's not a hack. It really depends. It really depends on in which directive you are coding right now. Maybe the user institution can be accessed from directly from the parent controller, but it looks. I'm not sure which directive is it, because basically once you tap into the correct directive, you should have 90% of your data in the parent controller directly. If you're tapping into the logo directive and you need to know the user institution, I'm not sure how that happened. It might happen, but most of the time it doesn't seem to be relevant. I think the reality is that if you tap into the correct directive, the correct after directive, you will have most of the information available in the parent controller. But to the question, it's okay, it's not a hack, because as long as you access properties and not functions, we will maintain them backwards compatible. So the skip to service, user session manager, service, and user institution will exist throughout the releases. A sub-question here is if using window app config primary institution code is okay. I think it seems safer. It's actually accessing it's a window object of the configuration. It's always there. It's not the exact same institution. The second example is the institution of the view. The first example is the user institution. Most of the time it's the same institution, but it's not exact. I mean, the user can log in to a different institution than the institution of the view, so it's not always the same institution, but it's a pretty nice solution as well. Is the use of a factory service to hold global data the right way? If we understood correctly, yeah, that's the direction Mehmet took, using a global service holding all the information in a really nice model. But of course, if you maintain a service that holds the information, you will need to be aware that if certain information is refreshed by any AJAX calls to the server, you will need to bind it, not using the one-time binding. If you want to Angular, then you should know that if you want Angular to listen to any changes in the service, you need to specify it first. So basically, the answer is yes, it's a good concept. It's a good concept to group services and information in together, share them with the community, let the community enhance them when needed, like Mehmet started already doing. So it's a good concept. There was a question about writing institution-specific CSS using a CSS selector with a class for holding the institution code. I'm not absolutely sure how this class was added to the DOM, meaning there's no classes with institution code out of the box, but I think the basic way is developing features, little features with their own CSS rules, and load those feature into the relevant views. So if you want a feature for institution A and not for institution B, then you will have a different package for each institution. If you do want to have inside your directive, inside your template, an HTML element that behaves differently for each institution, then you can use Angular, and instead of adding a class to the HTML element, you can add an attribute called ngClass that can accept a condition. And in that condition, you can access, as the Mehmet demoed, you can access your controller and ask if the institution taken from the configuration is XYZ, then add this class, and otherwise add another class, and then in the CSS code your CSS selector and values appropriately. So I'm not sure how the example in the question was implemented, but in general, there are ways to do CSS with different CSSs for different institutions. I don't think that you need to code your institution code into the CSS selector. Just in your view CSS, put different rules than in the other than in another institution CSS. So, regarding the question if we like for namespacing, we didn't publish any namespace guide. Just as always in CSS, if you want to be safe, then I guess the to prefix your code with CSCU in this example, or institution code or customer code is the best way. So yeah, I think prefixing all your CSS classes is recommended. And again, if you code directives for each and every one of your features, and then in the CSS of the feature or directive, you start every CSS selector with the name of your directive, then for sure it will only affect your the directive you're coding. If you're coding the the PRM logo after, you can add the PRM logo after as the first first element in the CSS selector, and then you are making it safer for overriding by others. Another question is for the naming convention for the actual HTML tags or directives. So the same here. You should use the PRM prefix and then your institution code or view code.
There is a question: is there a more appropriate? Hi, this is Mary, but is there a more appropriate form for discussing Primo web programming? This is a good question. I think that there is already the Slack that was that Iluna and Igloo did for the hackathon, but it's still very active. I think this is really good place to share and discuss programming questions. We are also following this Slack. We are working with the working group, with Primo working group, to see how we are really making it more formalized. But I think for now, this will probably be the best place.
Okay, thanks. Was that all the questions that made sense anyway?
What was the question?
The questions that I sent you were, did you address all the ones you wanted to talk about then?
We have like 5 more left. Just it's not a really easy question or a very short answer about jQuery, but as far as we're concerned, jQuery and Angular are not really intended to work together. It's a bit of a mix that we do not fully understand, except for personal flavor, which is fine. But there are implications of using jQuery. We are not really recommending it. If that's something you want to practice, it can work, but we're not sure exactly how is it useful. Maybe after what the presentations today and really what Mehmet demoed, the easiness of accessing elements from inside the controller rather than passing the DOM, maybe you got a little convinced, but maybe not. But everything that can be done by jQuery, we think can be done more easily inside the Angular framework. When to use Angular, JavaScript, or jQuery? Angular is just a framework. JavaScript is the actual language you're coding in. That's pretty much we thought we can help you with. Maybe there are questions that came up during the session.
Well, thanks for that. Sorry, that was a list that had been put in beforehand from people who had specific questions for the team at ExLibris. Thanks for your insights, Noam. I might have to rethink using jQuery then, because it's sort of a legacy code issue for me, and maybe I need to. Maybe the message reads that we've got to get a grip of Angular at some point. Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? I just need to relay them through the mic.
Well, I think there should be one disclaimer. Every component you write today is Angular 1. You should be very aware of it. And ExLibris is writing their code in TypeScript, so it would be easier to move to Angular 2, or Angular 4, or whatever number they come up with in the future. But this means that when they do move to the Angular environment, your components will probably need to be refactored.
Okay, thanks. Does anyone have any specific questions for any of the experts? I think I can summarise what I took from that, which was that Angular obviously is JavaScript, but just it's a interesting version of JavaScript, if you like. It's an implementation in JavaScript, and I've got by using pure JavaScript and a bit of jQuery code. But I think I may be just skimming around the edges, and possibly the solution to becoming a real master like these guys is to grasp the Angular nettle. I think and accept a few stings. Any specific thoughts?
What development tools would they be using?
That was a question from the audience. What development tools would you recommend using, ladies and gents?
I'm using Atom, just a text editor.
I'm a bit embarrassed. I'm using Notepad++.
There are many development tools available. I'm using WebStorm, which you need a license to, but Atom.js has a good GitHub and Git support, so I'm gonna try it soon as well. And Visual Studio is a good one.
Thanks. Does anyone else have any other questions?
This is Mary. Not comments. But thank you for inviting us to this meeting. And it's really good to see what people are already doing with it. And special thanks to, I think, Mehmet for once again trying to take what we are doing, and we're not always having the time to do the final steps in order to make it easier for you. So I think what we just saw here that Mehmet presented is really a good start for the community and for us as well, to see how we are making it even more easy for the developers. Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, Miri. Yeah, thanks to you all as well for coming on to the session. I think you're reluctantly dragging us all towards becoming Angular experts. I'm looking forward to that. Okay. Questions? Nope. Okay. Thanks very much to you all. We're all sitting here thinking very deeply about how we're going to implement the new UI. But there are no further questions at the moment, but thanks very much for your time. Just as a footnote, this has all been created a YouTube video. Hopefully we'll get a chance to edit out all the mistakes and things, and I'll put something else on the Alma list with all the URLs that we've discussed and the examples, and all the various links to GitHub and things like that, so you can have a look at that as well. If I could summarize, I think Angular is quite, I've been programming JavaScript for longer than I care to remember, and jQuery as well. And I find Angular slightly scary because there's something about it that's a little bit left field. But as Mehmet demonstrated, I think once you get into the mindset of Angular, it's actually no more difficult than JavaScript or jQuery or anything else. It's just, and the way you can dig around inside the Angular components and get all that information out about the user and things like that. It's probably worth investing the time and effort. It's easy to say when you're busy, isn't it? But that's where I'll conclude. Right, thanks very much, everybody. Then I'll disconnect all the wires and say farewell to everybody that's been coming in remotely. Thanks very much for your time, Mehmet, as well, and everybody else at ExLibris. Thank you.
Thank you.
And can we also thank you